first of all, Verstappen would never allow it.
That's something that Lewis actually said.
Yeah, he just
it
wouldn't
would never
allow
happen.
it in the first place. Those two obviously don't get along. We've seen quite a few moments between them in 2021, so they wouldn't even work as teammates to start off with.
Red Bull Racing had 860 points. The next closest to them is Mercedes on 409.
My God.
And then after that, Ferrari, who miss out by 3 points on second in 406. Hello and welcome to On Track GP. The season is done.
Wow.
I feel like it's been a very long season.
I feel like a glory hunter. Why am I wearing this?
I don't know. It looks good though.
For audio listeners, Matisse Armani is wearing a Red Bull jacket.
My weekend's just ruined.
How has this happened?
Because I didn't bring my McLaren top. I was forced by production
Punishment
to wear this.
is the punishment.
Honestly,
is real.
this just tops off my weekend. I never thought I'd actually let this touch me.
Looks really good though, mate.
Nice to be on a winning side though, for once, isn't it?
No, this is
Okay,
glory
all
hunting. I'm not happy.
Matisse and Joe are joining me today. Look, we've topped off a season, which in all honesty, it hasn't been the best season in F1. I mean, as a Red Bull fan, I can't really complain. But in terms of competitiveness, I think it's one that we might just forget.
I think in terms of like what, in a couple of years we'll go, who finished sort of third in the drivers? You sort of go, oh God, I couldn't tell you. But it will go down in history as the most dominant season by a driver, probably of all time. You look through just some of the statistics. He's got the highest win, Max Verstappen, obviously we're talking about here, just in case anyone hadn't watched this season. Highest win percentage ever. I mean, he won 19 out of 22 races. There's all these statistics, most hat-tricks. It's just unbelievable what he has done.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
I think as well, in terms of, we've had dominant teams. We've had Mercedes, we've had like dominant teams where they've just absolutely obliterated the rest of the field. But to have one driver and not the team, in terms of Perez matching him, it's just ridiculous. I don't think we'll see anything like that for a very long time.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know if we'll ever see it
honestly,
again.
when you get a team that dominant, you expect to see both drivers fighting it out at the front and sharing the wins a bit more. So
sharing the points as well.
So it's a bit mad, to be honest.
Do you think then this kind of puts Max, I mean, we've spoken about it before, do you think this puts him into that elite category?
100% it has to, because I think what he's achieved, it's not as though the RB19 is an amazing car, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the best maybe car of all time, because in all the other dominant eras, you had Lewis Hamilton, right? Bottas was still getting comfortable seconds the whole time. Perez isn't a terrible driver, and he hasn't been able to have comfortable seconds in the same way that Bottas did. So I think it shows that Max, we've never seen the like of it, and I don't think we ever will again. He has made it look easy, and it hasn't been easy, and he's done it with class and ability and even humour at times, and I'm blown away, and I'm not a Red Bull fan. It's just a joke how good he's been.
They have been pretty unstoppable. They have been completely unstoppable, really. And look, it's been great to watch as a Red Bull fan. And of course, Sergio Perez ends up being P2 in the drivers and also constructors. So it's a hat trick of a great season to round it off for Red Bull. There's been a lot of talk this week about Christian Horner versus Lewis Hamilton. Now Christian Horner, if anyone that doesn't know, he came out earlier this week and said that Lewis had approached Red Bull about that potential second seat, and Lewis completely rubbished those claims. Now Christian Horner has come back with a counter offer and said that it was actually Lewis's dad that had the conversation with him about the second seat. It's kind of gone on through the whole of the weekend. Hamilton was even talking about it in the paddock. He said Christian likes to stir things, and he's not ever spoken to Horner. He even checked with all of his team. Where do we stand on that? Who's telling the truth? Who's lying? What's going on?
To be honest, I was shocked when I saw the report, because this would never happen. Like, it's in a fictional world that this takes place, where these two actually end up in the same team. First of all, Verstappen would never allow it.
That's something that Lewis actually said.
Yeah,
it
just
would
wouldn't
never
allow
happen
it in the first place. Those two obviously don't get along. We've seen quite a few moments between them in 2021, so they wouldn't even work as teammates to start off with. And also, the Red Bull and Mercedes are probably the biggest rivalry on the grid in terms of, you just can't see them ever making any sort of contact for anything in terms of drivers or staff or whatever. So yeah, for me, when I saw that, who's lying, who's telling the truth? I think Christian Horner maybe was trying to play a game, because obviously Perez has had a really poor season. Maybe put him under a bit of pressure for next season, just to say, listen, we will, exercise our options. We are the best team.
But would you be stirring the pot with Lewis? He's
the biggest name on the grid. It's going to get the most talk. I think, even though it's the most unrealistic, it also does garner the most amount of attention. I think anybody else on the grid, it's not going to stir up as much of a fuss. It's not going to be as unrealistic as well. So I think he can kind of play the game of saying, listen, I'm going to make this story public, or I'm going to put it out there. But at the same time, people who know F1 know that this is absolutely, there's just no chance of it happening.
Yeah, I think there's also an element of no smoke without fire, and that probably maybe one little tiny passing comment may have been made that Lewis's dad said to somebody, and maybe got passed through to Christian Horner of, imagine if, what Lewis would have done in this Red Bull this season. Something like that then just gets escalated.
Throwaway comment.
You can already see there's a whole Drive to Survive episode just going to be about this moment. But if we allow ourselves for a second to imagine it did happen, I mean, come on, imagine those two in the Red Bull. It'd be unbelievable.
The in-team fighting would be ridiculous.
It would be mad. But also in turn as well, maybe this might be Lewis's dad putting a bit of pressure on Mercedes. Obviously, Lewis only just signed a new contract.
Yeah.
And Mercedes performed pretty poorly as well this season. So it could work both ways. Both teams have elements about them where some sort of pressure is maybe needed to be applied for next season.
Yeah.
Whether it's Perez or its performance. So
let me ask you both. Let's say that they were, just for hypothetical sake, they were in the same team. Who do you think would be the better driver of that car?
Well, I think Max has an advantage. Massive advantage, because he's driven the car before. Christian Horner absolutely loves him, and I think they'll tailor the car slightly towards him. What's their driving styles that match up? What would that be like, do you think?
Well, the question would be, would they be both driving individually and trying to win the drivers, or would they be driving together and trying to win the constructors?
No, they'd be trying to win the drivers.
They would be, but if they were going to do the constructors, nobody else would have a hope. They are by far and away the two best drivers on the grid, and no one else have hope. But if they're going against each other, after this season, I'm inclined to say I think Max would outscore Lewis.
Do you think?
I do.
I would have loved to have seen it. I know, but I would have loved to have seen. I know we kind of saw it still a little bit in 2021, but I would have loved to have seen Mercedes at their peak with the car, and Max where he is now in the Red Bull battling. And who knows, we might see it next season. But I would love to see the pair of them going head to head each week, because we even saw for a very short period of time, if someone is leading the race and Max isn't, we saw it with last week with Charles Leclerc. He might have slightly pushed him off track, and I want to see Max
more
battling.
than slightly. Just putting that out there.
I'll leave it open to interpretation. I want to see that battle at the front of the grid. That's, I feel like, what we've missed all season. I really do.
So who wins? Lewis 2019 or Max 2023?
Oh, that's a great question.
Wow. I'm backing my boy Lewis, because I still believe he's the greatest driver on that grid. When push comes to shove, I think he's a better driver than Max.
I think it's Max.
The irony of you wearing that and saying Lewis, and me wearing Ferrari and saying Max.
I don't want to wear this.
I think Max. I think Max. I just can't. I'm still processing what we've actually seen this season, and the unbelievable levels of dominance, and all the records that he's broken, which Lewis absolutely did as well, and has done more times, 7, nearly 8 world champion.
I think under pressure, in that will-to-will combat, which we're talking about, which Max hasn't really had this season, I think Lewis is better.
I think that's what we need to see more of in Max's drive.
Max.
And that's not, we can't be critical of it, because
it's not his fault.
Yeah, it's not his fault. They haven't had they haven't had the pressure as well this season for him to do that. And that's what I would like to see next season. Not that I don't want Red Bull to be dominant, I do, but I really want to see those interesting battles at the front of the grid. And I feel like everyone has to up their game. I mean, I say it's been a bit of a season to forget, aside from Red Bull, because everyone else has just been very poor or average, or the car just hasn't been up to standard. And I just don't think that we can have another season where a team is that far in front.
Yeah, it's been kind of close really between those back four teams. Aston Martin started incredibly well. Ferrari were really slow to start. Mercedes were just sort of tumbling along but doing fine. Then McLaren were absolutely, couldn't have been worse at the beginning, but then had that resurgence, and they kind of ended up just all of them doing okay. But we need to see a breakout team. next year. Somebody's got to take that fight to Red Bull. But let's not also forget, Red Bull aren't going to stay the same.
No, of course
Red
not.
Bull have all their unbelievable development, and they're gonna go again. The one little thing is that they get a bit less time in the wind tunnel from coming first in the constructors, and the one positive of Ferrari coming third yesterday, not second, is that we get more time in the wind tunnel than Mercedes. So I'm trying to cling to positive straws. There's not many.
Why didn't you mention this yesterday?
I'd have rather taken the 10 million
Yeah.
extra in the constructors than an extra hour in a wind tunnel. But never mind. People have. We need to see other teams bring it to Red Bull.
Who do we think's going to maybe make the improvements enough to be up there?
Forza Ferrari. Don't you both just looked at me like I was a young boy?
I
who
just
no,
completely ignored that. I went to re-ask the question.
it's going to be a 2008 all over again, World Championship next
No,
year.
I'm
isn't it?
serious. Who do we?
I'm serious.
Who do we actually think is going to be out there? And that is not me discrediting Ferrari, but there is a lot of work to do at Ferrari, as there is Mercedes.
There is.
But who can be that team that can possibly challenge Red Bull?
I wouldn't mind McLaren. Outside of Mercedes, obviously, I want Lewis to be up there, and I want him to win his extra title. But I think McLaren, they ended the season strongly.
Yeah, they
They
did.
got a great driver lineup. Very impressed with
Piastri's
what
first
rookie
season.
What a rookie season that was for him. Winning obviously a sprint as well. So, and Lando needs a win, as everybody keeps reminding.
My God, he needs a
us.
win.
Everybody keeps reminding us he needs a win.
And he'd have got one if it weren't for Max Verstappen in the second half of the
Well,
season.
exactly. It's very, very difficult when the one person who wins literally pretty much all of the race in the season is the one that's finishing in front of you. I mean, that's down. Is that more down to the car, the improvements that they have to make to the car?
For sure. I think Lando can squeeze out some wins in a season if the car's up to.
He's due one, isn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely due one. I actually feel quite sorry for him, to be honest. He hasn't won one. He's way too talented not to win a race.
Well, if you think about it, Carlos Sainz is the only person who's not involved with the Red Bull to actually win a race this season.
Out of 22.
That's mental.
It's absolutely crazy. And poor Carlos ended up finishing 7th in the Drivers' Championship. Going into that last race, he was 4th and ended up 7th. But you'd probably rather be 7th and have had a race win throughout this season than finish 4th and not had a race win. So it's ebbs and flows.
He didn't have a great old weekend. We'll talk about that now, actually. Ferrari's odd strategy when it came to him. He started on the hards and, he looked to make up positions, this alternative strategy. He went out in Q1, didn't he, as well?
Yeah.
They put him on another set of hards. They kind of let him run towards the end of the race, didn't they? In the hope that there would be a safety car. Then they opted to go on the soft tyres in the last few laps. But he ended up, he started P16, ended up P18.
He retired, yeah.
So he must have been furious at, again, Ferrari's strategy being the issue with the weekend.
Shall I take this one?
I mean, I'm flabbergasted, honestly. I don't know what that was.
Mate.
That I witnessed. I really don't know what they were doing.
Well, they were waiting for a safety car at a track that you don't really get many safety cars at.
You don't get many safety cars unless Latifi bins it, which
Yeah.
is not on the grid.
Correct.
And they actually have pretty competent drivers out there this season. So what are you actually waiting for? And you've got a quicker car than most of the field. So you should be able to just get yourself naturally into a good position without all of this mind games.
I understand there's an element of like, right, okay, our driver's starting far down the grid. We have to gamble on an alternative strategy so that we, either overcut, undercut, safety car, whatever.
Yeah.
But they started him on hards. They just the Ferrari was not good on its hard tires, and they went, I know what we'll do. We'll put on some other hard tires. That's what we'll do.
Stick another set on.
And then we were watching it, watching the live, going,
pit again.
Hold on, they're going for a 2-stop strategy. Hard, medium. Maybe they'll put him on the mediums for like 10 laps to finish. And then they put him on the softs for like 1 lap. And he couldn't even do that. I mean, it was an absolute
nightmare.
They could not have got it worse. I mean, the only decent strategist in the Ferrari team is Charles Leclerc, who from the cockpit is going, right, let Perez overtake me. He's got a 5-second penalty. I'll try and back up George. And that's the way to stretch out a thing. And they're in the, you couldn't see them, but you imagine on the pit wall,
what an idea that is.
That sort of meme where they've got all like that woman that's got like the math sums in front of her. And the Ferrari, they're going like, sorry, what are you doing?
What did you just say?
Oh, unbelievable.
Well, it's time he took it into his own hands, isn't it? Sometimes when it comes to strategy. But
that's actually like such a clever idea. Do you remember Sainz earlier on in the season as well, backing up Lando?
Yeah.
So like, I think the drivers are actually more intelligent than the pit wall at this point.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
I think actually we're getting to a point where Ferrari pit walls become so unreliable. Their pit stops are unreliable. Their strategy is unreliable. Their car's actually not failed too many times. What is it?
Second half of the season, it's actually been much more reliable car.
Not as many as you
couple
think.
of bins,
no,
but
I'd say on a quali, the car's good.
Yeah, they qualify well.
The car's really
controversial
good.
one. Charles Leclerc is the best qualifier on the grid.
Used to be George that was Mr. Saturday. Now it's you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Pass
Take it. I think he's better. I think Max is a better car, so he's obviously had more pole positions. But I think Charles can extract as much out of one lap as a car as anybody, maybe ever, has been able to do. I think that's it. He's phenomenal at that.
One lap merchant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then no, he can get it. He can do it in the race.
I'm joking. He can.
Second yesterday, we'll take it.
He can do it yesterday. He did, and he earned that yesterday. And it's a shame, I guess he's the one that's telling them the strategy. That's not his job. At the end of the day, his job is to race the car. And like I saw that thing, like the clip where he's talking about burnouts. Let me do burnouts. They're like, no burnouts. So I don't know. I think there needs to be a lot of thinking and talking this summer in Ferrari. But I did feel really bad for Carlos Sainz yesterday. Abu Dhabi as a race, you guys were a little bit underwhelmed by it, weren't you?
It always is a little bit underwhelming. Do you agree? I mean, except 21. But
I think the occasion ruined it. The fact that the season was done. I think if there was something on the line, we could have potentially seen. That's what the last race of the season is for, isn't it? It's for drama. It's for a spectacle. But when everything's pretty much wrapped up, I mean, the most we had was between Ferrari and Mercedes, who was going to finish second in the constructors. That was as much drama as we had, to be honest. And
the FIA even messed that up by giving Perez a 5-second penalty, which is just such an unnecessary 5-second penalty to give. If there was Perez and Norris have this contact, which was just kind of clumsy driving, and racing incident. I don't think it was a 5-second penalty. And if it's that much of a problem, and it comes back to the same thing in Vegas, just swap the cars. Just swap the cars back. We don't need to be dishing out. We used to do that all the time, and
just swap the cars.
Suddenly now giving penalties out, which are either way too aggressive or nowhere near
as aggressive.
They don't do the right thing. Just let Norris just go back if that's the case. And then we have a more interesting end to the race because the Ferrari for Mercedes battle is back on. But Perez with that 5-second penalty, it then kind of takes it completely out of Ferrari's hands and Mercedes walk away with it. Obviously, maybe there's a little bit of bias from me there because I wanted us to have second. But I think I didn't really understand that whole penalty Perez situation. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and he was not happy about it. He was reprimanded after the race for the comments that he made towards the stewards on the team radio. He said, "These stewards are a joke. They've been bad this year. It's an absolute joke. You are not. You know they are not at Formula One level." So,
but people say that all the time.
Can't say it though, can you?
But people say it all the time. It's the first time I've ever seen that they've got getting at someone. But all the time they go, that is a joke. That I can't believe that they've made that decision. That's ridiculous. This needs to be looked at. They say it all the time, and suddenly they're having a go at Perez. I don't. So again, the FIA just making it up as they go along.
Just making it up as they go along.
Keeping Checo in check, literally.
Okay, I mean, look. At the end of the day, Checo has taken home P2 and another constructors. Well. He has got a lot of criticism. He's got a lot of criticism this season, and I do think a lot of it's been worth it. But what can we expect him to do next season? Because again, it started really well for him this year and just tailed off.
Needs to fight back because that will be his last Red Bull season if he's not careful. His contract's running out. There'll be no reason for them to renew it if he doesn't put in a very, very strong performance and extract a lot more pace out of that car because obviously you were saying Max is quite special and he has, taken it to new levels 100%. But there is a medium, I think, where Max is maybe slightly overachieving, but Perez is definitely underachieving and he needs to bring that back up because he should be putting that car on podium every single race really with the pace it has. So yeah, I think Perez is under a lot of pressure. I think Christian Horner won't be so forgiving in his public, interviews next season if he's putting in that kind of performance. And especially if the other cars move up and actually start to improve, then Red Bull might not win constructors, next time if Perez is not chipping in. Because really, Max won it on his own, really.
He had enough points to beat Mercedes on his own. By like 150 points or something.
I'll give you some stats here on.
Love stats.
Well, it's not really a stat. It's just fact. Actually, it's
Perfect.
Just points. Red Bull Racing had 860 points. The next closest to them is Mercedes on 409.
My God.
And then after that, Ferrari, who missed out by 3 points on second in 406. Then there's a gap, McLaren 302, which is brilliant for them because what a comeback when you think about
the start. They only scored points after summer, really, didn't they?
Yeah, they've done really, really well. Aston Martin 280. Alpine 120, Williams with a very respectable 28 points.
27 of which scored by Alexander Albon.
Yes, 7th. Alpha Tauri ended up on 25 points, actually. So that was kind of a late resurgence for them because at one point they were rock bottom. Alfa Romeo was 16 and Haas with 12. So yeah, you have to just commend how incredible that Red Bull is. I mean, we say it all the time, don't we? From a Mercedes perspective, I mean, George obviously getting a podium this weekend, but it hasn't been a brilliant season. No. And we've spoken about the car so much, and we're finally seeing the death of the car.
Yeah. Thank God. I mean, what's next? The W15, 16? I don't know how many more upgrades we've got coming up. Yeah, I mean, it's been a season to forget again. They really need to find a way to get themselves back up to the top of that grid as soon as possible, because I don't want to... I think the worst thing I can think of as a Hamilton fan is that we don't even get a title challenge from him for the rest of his career. A title win is obviously going to be difficult with Max, but at least I want to see him fight one more time.
How much longer do you think we can see Lewis?
How many more years?
Yeah.
Did he sign for 2?
Well, he said that he's not going to stop racing until they put a South Africa Grand Prix in the calendar.
Did he say that?
He did say that, yeah. I mean,
that could be
next year.
That could be.
That
could be a while. Then he'll be racing. How old is he now? 39, 38?
I think he's 38. Yeah.
38. I think
maybe.
I think he'll wrap it at 40. I think he's 2 more seasons.
You think he'll just see out this contract and go?
I think so.
I don't
know. Because I think 2 more years is enough time for Mercedes to step up and produce a car.
Maybe win 1 championship.
Produce a car.
If possible.
Next season could be closing the gap, and the season after is really going for it, and that's it. And I think if he wins the title, I think it's a great way to end
that's when you
his
go,
career as well. So,
100%.
But I think if they don't get it in the 2 seasons, I don't see him extending for another 2 and just prolonging what could be.
Does he dive back to McLaren or something if they're having a resurgence to do a 1-season wonder somewhere?
I would like that.
Potentially.
Like that. I think if Lando was to go to Red Bull and that spot opened up for Lewis, I would love to see Lewis back at McLaren if they were to be the next team challenge in Red Bull. For him to try and win
they could well be next year.
For them to try and win.
From what we've seen this season, I know the points might not reflect it, but in terms of actual, race performance, they're the only team that has actually probably been able to really battle, consistently.
But it's because Lewis has so many other interests outside of F1. That's what makes me feel like he's gonna.
Interesting. I haven't really considered that, but that's a good point.
He loves his fashion. I think he's turned down acting jobs. So I do think that Lewis...
He invests in a lot of vegan food as well.
Yeah, I do think Lewis is probably going to have other ambitions.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite right. Right, so just to give you the overall standings in terms of drivers, it was Max Verstappen on
Max won?
Oh, yeah, so weird, right?
Wow.
Such a shocker. I'll tell you what, how many points do you think Max had come the end of the season?
Oh, God.
1,000?
1,000?
It must be 540, 550.
What's yours?
I'm going to say 570.
Oh, you were 5 out. 575.
Felt like that.
Yeah, 575. Max Verstappen. Next was Sergio Perez with 285. So again, very big gap there. Lewis Hamilton, a very respectable third, considering the car. 234. Alonso, brilliant season for him. We've spoken about him loads. 206. The same points is Charles Leclerc, 206. Lando Norris, 205. Misses out by 1 point on joining that top 4 gang. Carlos Sainz with 200, George Russell with 175, Piastri, rookie season, unbelievable, on 97. Lance Stroll makes up the top 10, 74. Pierre Gasly and Ocon, 11th and 12th with 62 for Gasly, 58 for Ocon. Albon, 27. Sonoda, 17. Bottas, 10. Hulkenberg, 9. Ricciardo, 6, which I'd say is pretty good considering he didn't have that many races.
Yeah.
Magnussen, 3. Lawson, 2. Sargent 1 and Nick de Vries with 0.
Yeah, Logan Sargent, who drove every single race, ended up 21st in the championship of 20 drivers.
Yeah,
that's bad.
That's not great, is it?
Behind Liam Lawson.
Yeah,
that's bad.
It's not great, is it?
No, but they were praising him yesterday.
Well, I think James Vowles came on the radio and said, like, we're looking forward to next year or something with him. So looks like he might be sticking around.
He didn't bin it much.
I think he was the most expensive driver.
Yeah.
Maybe even...
More than Haas?
Did he bin it much?
Yeah.
He did bin it a few times, yeah.
I think we forget because we got so used to it. It just sort of cut to a sort of sergeant stuck in a wall and they go, right, we'll just go back to qualifying.
Well, I'll tell you what, once we get to relive it all on Drive to Survive, we'll remember lots of things we've forgotten earlier in the season. Guys, it's been a great season in terms of being all together and loving life on Track GP and our quizzes and podcasts. What's been your favourite moment of this F1 season?
Oh, God. I would just go for Saturdays. I think the qualifying this season has been phenomenal. We've seen so many good.
More interesting than the race at times. Yeah,
absolutely. We've had some absolutely banging qualifying sessions. Also, some good races, and controversially, I'm also going to say
sprint.
Las Vegas. No, I was going to say Las Vegas. I thought the race at Vegas actually in the end was probably my favourite race of the season.
Okay.
I'm going to go with losing to Richard in the quiz. And also Silverstone, going to Silverstone as well.
Yeah.
In person.
That was cool.
That was very fun. And losing to him in the quiz there as well.
Yeah. Quite a lot of losing for you, wasn't it?
It's a lot of quizzes with Richard, which I think is just pointless.
Yeah, it is pointless that we have to honestly quiz with Richard.
But we was in that incredible Aston Martin car.
Oh, man.
And I think that's probably the highlight.
Was it a 1930? I think it was a
Gorgeous,
1932 Aston Martin
stunning.
That was made just to race around Spa. Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
It was ridiculous.
That was unreal.
I equally loved Silverstone. I thought it was a brilliant weekend, brilliant race. We were lucky enough to be there. That's probably been my highlight, and I loved seeing Lando as well there. I love Lando.
Yeah, that's cool.
I am a Max fan, but I love
McLaren's resurgence is up there.
That was great. I love. That's where I feel like McLaren's resurgence really came through at Silverstone. It was a brilliant weekend. Thank you very much, guys. Also out this week, we were all there. Who's in the cart?
Who is in the cart?
You have to find out. We have a brand new series coming out. Who's in the cart? We were all featuring there, so you'll have to figure out who was in the cart against who. We went to a karting track. It was very fun. It was an early start.
Very early start.
Few injuries.
Few injuries. Oh dear. Tune in to find out. There's a clickbait.
Make sure you check it out.
Thursday, 6 p.m.
Thank you. Thursday, 6 p.m. It is dropping. But of course, even though it's now, season's over, time to party, winter break.
When's Netflix series out?
Feb.
Yeah,
End of Feb. We will still have all your content right here. We will not leave you high and dry. We'll be back every week here on Track GP with all the latest going ons, won't we? And then I guess we'll see what's going to happen in terms of the cars, in terms of the transfers.
If there's any.
If there's any. I feel like this time next year we're going to be like, oh my God, there's so much going on.
Do you think so?
I feel like as we're, kind of heading into that time where people's contracts are up, whereas this season it's a bit like we're just going to sit pretty for another year.
Yeah, I agree.
But we'll keep you covered no matter what. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been On Track GP.